Hello everybody, welcome to the video podcast. That's right, I said podcast, doing something a little new here. Going over a little history of the racetrack, because our main focus is the South Butler racetrack, because that's what we call home. And Don and I were talking one day, and we came to a kind of mutual agreement that there's a lot of history out there in people's heads, people who aren't exactly spring chickens, and we probably should get some of that information before Father Time collects us all up. Put it out there in cyberspace forever. So, we are going to be getting together with a group of the guys from way back in the day. I'm talking 1960s and 70s back in the day. And we're going to do kind of like an actual video podcast. So, I'm Dan Davis, and this is Saturday at the Shop.
So, what do we got? How are we going to do this?
How are we going to do this? Everything's already running.
Okay.
Okay, so basically, we're here talking about South Butler Dragway. 1958, somebody gets a bright idea. They're going to put a drag strip in the middle of nowhere. What do you know about that?
I was lucky enough to sit with Paul Jackson, who built the place. And, a little history on him. He was Paul Jackson and a guy by the name of John Marin from Montgomery, New York, were the East Coast managers under a guy by the name of Ed Otto, who ran the NASCAR drag racing. NASCAR was into drag racing in those days.
That's cool.
And John, Marin, and Paul were the East Coast managers. And in fact, Ed Otto has a book out now that I'm not sure if he talks about that in there or not, but he does mention NASCAR drag racing. And so Paul was into racing, into drags a lot, and he was a motorhead, and those guys, Paul and his brother John, had hot rods, factory hot rods, stuff like that. So anyway, he's going to build a drag strip. First couple of years it was NASCAR sanctioned. Then he started his own timing organization called TANA, Timing Association of North America.
Okay.
And it just went from there. Just another note. The way I got to meet with him is my father and him were friends.
Oh.
So, and Paul was running a marina over in Waterloo, Geneva area, and so I got to go over there. I spent all afternoon with him one day just writing stuff down, and because I didn't start showing up there till '66.
Okay.
So, because I was friends with Gary King, whose family took it over, and a few of those Savannah guys, so that's how I ended up there. But, anything before that I would have had to get from Paul, because I didn't know anybody else, being a kid, I was, early teens, I didn't know anybody else, that would sit down and talk to me.
Right.
But anyway, when the track opened, Paul says it was more, they did some racing there in '58, but they did a lot of community stuff there. I mean, there was like town picnics, and he had a demolition derby there, which actually there's a couple of pictures of the derby cars in my video.
Where do you put those? Over in the spectator side?
I'm not sure where that was.
Yeah, because I'm trying to picture where they could do it.
Yeah, but there's a lot of land there.
Yeah.
I guess he had a connection or was friendly with Raymond Warwick, which is Ron's father.
Okay.
And he leased the land from him. But ironically, that was going to be the flagship track, and he would never own it.
Right.
Which is weird, right?
Yeah, but probably in a long-term friendship, and sometimes those things work out, sometimes they don't. In this case, it did. So, and then it was in '59 they started really putting the hardcore drag racing in. They had the original tower was a chicken coop that they moved over and put it up on, I don't know if it was blocks or if he built a foundation or like a 4x4 foundation for it. They ran that for a few years, and then they built the tower that we're familiar with. And they picked up the other tower, the chicken coop, and moved it back and made it the tech shack.
Didn't they run 1/8 mile one day and 1/4 mile another day?
Once he got rolling, It was around 60 or so. They started running 8th mile Wednesday night, and Friday night was like a test and tune,
Okay.
and then quarter mile on Sunday. So, and that,
So there was a quarter mile track at the beginning?
always was. It was
Okay,
always
so
quarter mile.
How much land do you need to have a quarter mile track? I mean, that's...
Well, you figure 1,320 feet, and then whatever the shutdown is, you know. Of course, you guys know that there wasn't an awful lot of shutdown
No.
there.
Yeah, you find
There's a lot of natural shutdown.
Yeah.
You know.
Across the ditch, I hear.
Yeah, if you talk to Ron, he'll tell you that Ron didn't come to the track too much, but when he was there, it was usually hauling people out of the field at the end because they had some fast cars there,
Yeah, he
and they would
says
go off the end of the track.
He says there's a ditch there that they would jump
Yeah,
and then go into the trees,
yeah.
and then he'd pull them out with the tractors.
Go down there with the tractor and pull them out. You know?
It had to cost a penny to put all that in. That's a lot of pavement.
At that time, now he says that it was a little over 100,000 in 1958 money.
That's crazy.
So, and he says that he got some grants for his, you know, which is a
I think
whole
you should
nother,
elaborate
which
on
is a
that,
whole nother
because nobody
story.
else is here to ever worry about that.
Well,
They're all gone.
yeah, well, yes and no.
Yeah.
But he actually had to throw in a little bit of his own money because, you know. But if some you know, funny quirks was it would be the east lane. About halfway down, you'll see a little dip in the track. I don't know if you guys can still notice it or not.
We pretty much fixed it when we redid it.
Well, that was a quicksand pit. And when they built it, they threw everything but heavy equipment in there to try to bridge that thing, and you could never got it flat. It was always just a little, and you would never notice it walking over it, but you hit it at 60, 70 miles an hour, and you would feel it.
Okay.
You know, and then of course there was the concession stands on both sides, then the towers we discussed. Again, I didn't get there till probably in the 66 from then on. And you know, the local kids would come down and work because we were all friends. Gary had 2 brothers, and it was Gary and his 2 brothers and anybody else he could get to come down and work there. You know, and we all had a good time. The way I ended up on the mic was I just one day was nobody else wanted to, so I ended up with it.
There you go.
You know, and that's how I got there. But
Well, you did a good job.
well, thanks. It was there was cars coming in from we'd get Niagara Falls guys there, Buffalo guys from Syracuse. Now you got to remember, Paul opened in '58. Cicero opened in '60, and Niagara didn't open until '61. So he was the only quarter mile track running in New York State that I know of. I don't think New York International opened until '60 or '61. So,
and of course, the next thing with that is this is before the thruway was finished,
yeah,
before 104.
yeah,
So if you were driving from Buffalo area, you were really, you know.
yeah.
Yeah, you
You
take
came
a
down
road
31 or
along,
Yeah.
so.
That was a day's work.
Yeah.
You know, to race and then go home at the
Yeah.
end.
The funny thing about it was, like I said, if you got a great score for you guys would be to get Gary King in here, talk to him, because Gary knew backgrounds on everybody because he was there every day from '66 till it cleared, you know, till it closed. And every Sunday, every Wednesday, whenever they ran that, you know, he's got. I knew the guys from looking at their cars. Gary knew them personally.
No?
Everybody that ran there, you know, and there was a lot of people that came there.
Yeah.
You know, and he could fill you in on a lot of stuff. Just a few funny stories. The scales, the weight check. Paul bought those scales from Spee's Vinegar Works.
Oh, up on 414 there.
Yeah, they had switched them out because they were bringing bigger trucks in, and he got those and brought them over, and that was what weighed the cars in.
Yeah, I don't think they're there anymore.
No, they were there right up until a few years ago. They
Yeah.
had when John Senior didn't want us there. He pulled them out, but the actual scales themselves were there, and then we had few local vandals that came down and spread them around the fields and
Right.
stole the rest of them. So, you know, what are you going to do with those? You know,
Kids
so,
are gonna be kids.
yeah.
Kids are gonna be kids.
So that's what happened to that. A couple of the funny stories was there was one time, I remember it was a Nova. I don't remember the guy's name. Gary would remember the guy's name. Takes out, now the way the clocks were home built, and at first you only had one traffic light. So you'd hit a toggle switch, traffic light would go off, you'd take off. If you had a handicap start, you would go down on the track, walk off whatever the distance was, pull that car up,
Okay.
Okay.
and then just take off from there. You know, you
Oh,
start
so
them
that's why in the
stagger.
film I would see that a car would be up here and one would be back here. And,
They
okay.
would stagger.
So it's kind
Well,
of
that-
bracket racing, but
It-
before bracket racing.
Before
Yeah.
brackets, yeah. So eventually they got the clocks built, and you had a couple of toggle switches on them, but you would hold them over the two toggle switches with your fingers. And if this guy was going first, you'd let that one go first, and then let the second one go.
High tech.
All
So
high tech.
They didn't dial in back then. Those ran on an index, right? There was a certain amount that was allowed for, like say
C
you
automatics or something like
and
that.
like you run a super stock class, one car because it was a small block got this much time, the big block car would then take off. But he ran on that index, right? It wasn't.
No, not when they first started. They ran actual classes. Super stock A automatic
Okay.
would run another super stock A
So it
automatic.
was always heads up, except for you had those instances where.
Yeah, and I was lucky enough to find on eBay, of all places, there was a guy in Niagara Falls, who was 89 years old. Back in when Paul was running it, when he first started TANA, you would sign up, and it cost I don't know what it was, $10 I think for a membership, and you would get a patch, a decal, the pin, a rule book, and then some of the insurance forms that I think I showed
yeah.
you guys.
Okay.
And that was your whole package. Well, this guy had one unopened,
Wow.
and I bought it from him.
Wow.
So I had the whole thing, and they had the rule book in there. So I've got actually I got a rule book from 62, 63, and 64, and it's pretty extensive. It's as good as NHRA was using. And in fact, Paul was running timing systems. Right, NHRA was still using a flagman at national events. Paul had an electronic system.
Way ahead of time.
Yeah, he was way ahead.
So
But they,
basically a pioneer. I mean.
oh yeah, he was an engineer by trade.
Okay.
So pretty smart guy. And of course he was hooked up with NASCAR, so he wasn't just some guy down the street. He had some pretty good
Where's
connections.
your people? Yeah.
Especially
So-
with Kodak and Xerox, they could make whatever if you
The
knew the
guy
right
that-
person.
The guy that built the clocks was an engineer. I think his name was damn, it's written down on one of the things I gave you.
All right.
Because he had a guy from Xerox build the clocks, and another guy from he was a school teacher, I believe, in Newark, that designed the logo,
No?
Oh,
the
okay.
TANA
The Tana
logo.
one? Okay.
So,
Great logo.
It is.
well, excellent, better than a lot of them today, I think.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, I was going to tell you this guy had a Nova, and he was in the Eastern Lane, and I don't know if this dip had anything to do with it or not, I don't know. But he takes off, and of course this is after we had the better clocks built. And so their clocks are running almost like a Klondike timer. And so we're all standing there waiting, and we're in the tower, and the left-hand lane, the westbound lane goes through. The other clock is still running, and everybody's looking around, looking down range, waiting for the guy to go through. He must have broke down or something, and looking down the track, and no car on the eastern lane. So we're figuring he must have gone right off the end. He's down in the field where we can't see him.